Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Backtrekking, the podcast where we look back at the real-world inspirations behind classic episodes of Star Trek. I'm one of your hosts, Caliban, and Benson's on my mind, and I'm joined on this episode by my co-host.
I'm Gooey Fame, and I wish I had my surfboard with me right now. I'd wax it.
And we've returned to explore the stories behind your favorite Trek shows, and today we're talking about two stories about bombs too smart for their own good. It's the 1974 sci-fi cult classic Dark Star and the 5th season Star Trek Voyager episode Warhead.
Yep, fits perfectly. We don't even have to explain it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any necessary explanation needed, but we will talk about the idea behind things that inspire other things, something very important to our show, when we talk about our subjects later. But first, first I'm going to clear my throat. I've been really froggy lately, and I hope that that's not indicative of anything bad. I'm not sure what that would be.
I feel like I always am.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I do talk every single day for a living.
Yeah, I also hope that it's not, like, anything bad. I'm like, hopefully I'm not dying.
I wonder if they used to say that when I was a singer that talking can be just as bad, if not worse, than singing for you. And so a lot of times when we were resting our voices that, they would say, don't talk or sing. And I'm not sure if that's true because I used to sing all the time, like almost every day. And now I talk every day and it's so much worse. So maybe I'm just getting old. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
You just got to stop talking.
Yeah, I know. It's like, if it turns out that I can't talk anymore, then I guess this is all shot. But, I was thinking the other day, I cut my hand. Actually, I burned my hand on some beans. No more information. I'm not taking any questions at this time. But I got like a huge, it's like a 2nd-degree burn. I got a huge blister on my hand. And I couldn't hold a game controller. And I was like, oh my God, like what if I... lost a finger or something like that, or lost one of my thumbs. And I know that you can get they have accessible controllers. I mean, it's not that big of a deal, but then it started to balloon out. And it was like, what if I was blinded? What if I lost my eyesight? My eyesight has been getting worse as I get older. Like, what if I can't play video games? What if I can't read? These sort of body insecurities that I don't know if you're experiencing yet, but are certainly piling up for me.
I go through that sort of insecurity about almost everything, not even
I suppose
physical. It could be what if
there are a lot of things to worry about.
Monetary, all that stuff. Yeah. I run through the whole catalog.
I don't know how practical of a person you are, but I feel like I'm a fairly practical person, but I'm also somebody who has never really worried about that sort of thing. And so now that I am, it's so much worse because I have no practice, worrying about it. And Nothing huge, but recently I had to go to the doctor for a thing, and it occurred to me that I don't think I had been to the doctor in over 20 years. I just kept living my life and running into things and then shaking it off and getting up and just, it's probably broken. It's probably fine. And never really having to worry about anything until I had something that I couldn't really just say, well, I'm just going to keep walking on it, And so that's been a whole journey of just learning about insurance and all these things that I had never really had to worry about when I was younger. But
no, I mean I'm always worrying about things, but stuff like that I worry too much, and I'm like I'm not going to the doctor, and then it's gets so much worse.
Right? Yeah.
So I'm trying to be better about that sort of stuff, but
yeah,
there's a financial factor involved of how many
certainly.
How many trips to the dentist/doctor can I get in this year?
Yeah.
Not enough to take care of all of it.
Yeah, the dentist one is the worst. I lucked out on that because I had my wisdom teeth out a long time ago, and then just completely randomly, I didn't know at the time, but I knew once I went to the dentist, a piece of bone or tooth that had been left in after 15 years decided to make its way out. And so I was in pain, in my jaw, and I had this thing poking out, and I was pretty sure that's what it was, but I went to the dentist anyway, and they confirmed it, and everything was okay, and eventually it came out. But in the meantime, they're like, well, we'll check you and everything. And I realized I haven't been to the dentist in 15, 16 years. And they're like, oh, your teeth are fine. And I'm like, A, it's good. B, all that's going to do is just convince me that I'm invincible and I never need to go to the dentist or to the doctor at all. So, yeah.
No, I had the opposite experience. The start of I think it was 2 years ago, the start of COVID, which is, it's like crazy that's 2 years ago. But
wow.
I became a little bit more convinced. I was like, well, I have this job with like some benefits, so I can afford to go. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna start to fix these things. And I started with the dentist because that was the one I was most worried about. And I had the opposite, where I went in, they're like, you need this, and this done, and I'm still like making my way through the checklist of that. And it's not like one of those things where they are like, they're not swindling me, you know what I mean? It's like,
I hope not.
It's like cavities and stuff like that.
Oh, sure. Because I went that first time that I went to the dentist, they're like, everything looks great. Oh, and you'll need 5 cavities filled. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Is that a thing? Really? Like, how can I be okay and have 5 cavities?
Yeah.
And then I went to this other dentist who was recommended by a couple friends of mine. And he's like, no, that's fine. I mean, there's nothing really that we have to do here. I think your teeth look pretty good. So
so maybe I'm getting swindled.
Well, I'm not telling you to refuse care.
Maybe cavities are BS.
Screw you, cavities. I never believed in you. But I mean, there are. To be fair, the first dentist I went to was on a college campus, and so I think their entire racket was, we've got these are kids at college, so already they've got money from somewhere. They're on their parents' insurance. And so we're just going to fill these cavities, And as soon as the pandemic began to stress their business, they went out of business and they're not even around anymore.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah. So there's predatory service individuals at every service, but I'm sure that you're doing fine.
My dentist, it's been great. My dentist is a little rude, actually, but
oh, really?
the overall experience has been great.
My dentist, well, I grew up in a small town and we had one dentist. And so he was my dentist and everybody's dentist for years and years and years. And he just retired a couple years ago, but he still sees like his older patients. And so my parents have moved out of the state now, but my mom was saying, call up Dr. So-and-so and to make an appointment, he'd see you. He remembers your mouth. He helped you get your braces and everything. I'm sure it'd be fine. And I'm like, you know what? That seems a little weird to me, but I guess at the same time, like, he's got to worry about his retirement income and keep him busy. And if he's allowed to practice still, maybe that's what I should do. I don't know. And he tells me 10 cavities, and then I know, those are real.
Okay, yeah. See, in almost any situation, I feel like knowing a guy is the best situation. It's like if you know a dentist,
definitely,
that's pretty good.
Yeah. Do you know any electricians? I need one of those.
My dad is an electrician.
Oh, okay. We're talking after this.
Okay.
For sure. All right.
Cool.
But before we talk about that and we talk about our subject, I want to talk really fast about the fact that Nicholas Meyer, a big figure, of course, in the world of Star Trek films, directed 2 and 6, wrote 2, 4, and 6, has been talking for a while about this Khan show that he wants to do, which is essentially a Khan prequel story that will kind of give us like the rise of Khan and his eventual, however he ends up on the Botany Bay, when he sees Kirk. And he's a guy who, I read his autobiography because we were talking about it on Enterprising Individuals. He's a really interesting guy, but he is a guy who it seems like has had a lot of trouble getting things made the way he wants, with his Hollywood career. And also is somebody, and maybe this contributes to that trouble, somebody who's like, doesn't take a lot of shit from people. And so he initially, I think, had been talking, a couple of years ago, he had mentioned that they were talking to him about this idea, which seemed like a cool idea, and it hasn't really gone anywhere. And so like a couple months ago, he just took to the internet and just tried to shame Paramount, I think. It was just like, here's my idea. And he sort of gave the pitch in this video and it sounded really interesting and kind of like the ball's in your court. Well, it looks like they've taken the ball and they are deciding to do something with it. And it's going to be a podcast, it sounds like.
Interesting.
It's going to be, according to what Meyer has said in a post recently, that they are finalizing the deal to turn it into a podcast, which he will write and presumably direct. Again, a little passive aggressive. Seems like he's not sure. But it's going to be a podcast, a dramatic podcast. And then who knows, possibly if it's successful, might be adapted back into a film. And for me, it's like, this could absolutely work. But like many of Paramount / CBS's recent moves, it sort of drips with cynicism. It's clear that they want to, now that they have moved into the firmly into the streaming TV space, it seems like they want to move into the audio space as well, right? Why let Jeff Bezos have the whole thing with his Batman podcasts and his Sandman all his man podcasts or whatever it is?
Yeah.
Like, why not let Paramount move into the audio space? No, I don't think it's a bad idea, but it's like, it's really interesting that they wanted to do this now. And even though I do think that the Meyer Con series could be a good podcast, I feel bad that a guy who has made a bunch of really great movies is going to be sacrificed on the altar of, let's make a podcast out of something. Oh, your thing. Yeah.
Right. It feels both like them wanting to do a podcast now, both feels like they like, oh,
well, Transformers can't be a podcast, but a bunch of people talking about Con could be a podcast.
But it also feels a little bit like taking him and being like, God, you want to do it? Okay, we'll give you a podcast. Like, no, go away.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And it's like, well, of all, because I don't know, you'd think you would want to value like someone who's actually written for it before, you know?
Yeah, and who has arguably, you know, he didn't do it by himself, but arguably saved Star Trek. Like, you have Paramount Plus and all this stuff because of the success of Star Trek 2 and, you know, showing audiences that Star Trek was something worth doing, which got people excited about Star Trek The Next Generation and so on and so forth.
Right.
But how about a podcast, though? Maybe, they want him to work his magic in the world of podcasts.
Yeah, which is, I don't know, because you do have like a certain subset of fans who they just kind of are, they're just not trustworthy of like the new writers of Trek. And don't you think that could be like a marketing thing? Like, hey, you want someone who, you claim you want someone who understands Star Trek. Well, we got,
this is your guy.
The guy, you know,
Yeah.
you think that would be great for like a, you know, a Strange New Worlds type thing, because that's kind of the push for that show too, or like the pitch is like, you like old Star Trek, right?
Here it is.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yes. I think that maybe they are trying to bring his legitimacy to the world of podcasts, and yeah, I mean, for good and bad. Like, I don't know. Like, I have not yet really got myself into the world of dramatic or like comedic fictional podcasts. But you know, Star Trek might make me try it. You know, since I'm familiar with Star Trek. So I don't know. It seems like a real smart marketing move. But I would really rather support the artist and hope that he gets to do it the way he wants to do it. So hopefully he will be able to accept the compromise and make something that will help Paramount in that sphere. But, you know, just you said it, audio drama, a little engine noise, a little, you know, the red alert noise.
I would love the hum the whole time. That's something all new Trek is missing, I feel like, is... unless I just don't hear it on my TV, but I feel like I don't get the hum as much.
I have not really listened close enough to say Strange New Worlds to know if there is a hum, but I guess I wouldn't be surprised.
A little bit more music going on. You know, things are, there's a bit more music, like, this is how you need to feel right now. And I feel like that, whereas like there are so many scenes in Next Gen where it's just dead silent and you just hear, it's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it could be good. I mean, I listened to that like Wolverine one from a while back, and I thought it was pretty neat. I like a good, like, you know, audio drama. That's something they figured out a long time ago. So it's not hard to do good, I don't think.
Yeah, and I'm sure there has been Star Trek audio dramas, you know, like on tape or in the past. They certainly there's been. The example of Star Wars, so you know it's not a crazy idea, but we'll see what happens, and I guess more updates as we get them.
They're missing out by not making it a show set in the 90s during that time period, because then they can have all the people love, like, oh hey, there's a blockbuster, you know. They can totally do that. Yeah,
and Paramount, the way that they pick up things and execute them, even though I think that it's a little played out. It's perfect time for Paramount to jump in, just like when they did with the NFTs.
Yeah, exactly.
just in time
to
catch the NFT train. That's what the T stands for. It's the NF train.
The new fun train.
Let's get to the fun part of our show. Whether through satire, parody, or pastiche, artistic homage is in itself a valid and worthwhile art form. And it better be. We're doing a whole podcast about it. Artists, musicians, and filmmakers receive their inspiration from earlier works of art and indeed comment on their artistic forebears in their own work. In the relatively nascent world of cinema, this is more than doubly true, with many filmmakers staging sequences and employing characters and tropes that reference earlier influential works. Just Google the Odessa Steps sequence for insight into that phenomenon. When legendary filmmaker and cinematic iconoclast John Carpenter landed at USC Film School in the early 70s, he knew two things: that he loved genre fiction and he wanted to be a filmmaker. To do that, he'd need to direct a student film, one written by friend and classmate Dan O'Bannon, intended to poke loving holes in the bilious beach ball of the recent 2001 A Space Odyssey. The result was the 1974 cult film classic, Dark Star.
It is the future. Mankind has conquered the stars. He moves out to the endless interstellar reaches of the universe. An advanced exploration corps. A new breed of pioneer must seek out unstable planets and destroy them.
Drive sequence begun. Hit it, pin back.
And you are on the mission of the 21st century planet smashers. Dark Star. 20 years in space, 1 million light years from Earth. Their job is to clear a path for the colonization of space.
Back home in Malibu. I used to surf a lot, Talby. I used to be a great surfer.
Travel in an infinite universe with mind-melting excitement from beyond the stars.
Computer to bomb number 20. Return to the bomb bay immediately.
But I have received the operational signal.
Hello, Bob? Are you with me?
I wish I had more time.
Why don't you have more time?
Because I must detonate. I must detonate.
Commander Powell. Commander Powell, this is Doolittle. Can you hear me?
Man, what happened, man?
Hey,
Confirm. Power drive sequence activated. Roger, retracted. Lock all defensive systems.
Dark Star. They are not lost in space. They are loose.
This is the second John Carpenter I think we've done, because we did The Thing before, right?
Yeah. I think that's all we've done so far.
Yeah. And more to come. And this is his first movie. This is the first movie that he ever did. He originally directed it as a student project. It was about 45 minutes long for USC. This is before he dropped out of USC because he was too cool for USC. But it's funny because he is. Now he's John Carpenter. He did it his own way. I'm sure many directors are envious of his career and the way that he got to mostly do it the way that he wanted to do. But if he had stayed, his name might be spoken, in the same breath as George Lucas, John Milius, John Landis, and all these other, Southern California film mafia type guys. But he was there at USC, directed this film as his student project. It was then later picked up by a small time distributor who gave them a little more money to sort of fill the film out and shoot a couple extra scenes, bring it to feature length. And the whole thing cost about $60,000 total.
Wow.
And between Carpenter himself and his co-producer, co-writer, Dan O'Bannon, they both agree that the movie was way better before they added all the extra crap that the producer made them add to it.
Right. Yeah. It feels like longer than it should be, I guess. Or I just felt like there was like a whole, because it's like there's this whole thing going on with the computer system, but then it's like partway through the movie they're like, and there's an alien you gotta feed, and then they're chasing an alien around, and it was like, actually I liked pretty much everything in the movie, though. It just felt like weird, like it almost felt like a separate movie in the middle of the movie, you know?
Yeah, that is a total effect of of what you're describing, and him, them being told to make it longer. Chasing an alien in a funny way around the ship, and the laughs that didn't get from some of the audiences led Dan O'Bannon to think, what if an alien was chasing people in a scary way? And that's why he wrote the movie Alien in 1979.
Yeah, it's watching it. It was like, this feels exactly like Alien, but funny. And I actually thought it was funny. It was very like Tom and Jerry a little bit. Like,
yes, Looney
he's getting
Tunes.
Beat up, and
yeah.
I don't know. I liked it. I like it was like clearly just a beach ball. You know, that was pretty funny.
Yeah, it absolutely was a beach ball. It was a beach ball that was operated by Nick Castle, who's also a film director, an actor, friend of John Carpenter's, and played Michael Myers, played the Shape in the original Halloween.
Yes. Yeah, that's awesome.
Co-wrote Escape from New York. Dan O'Bannon, who, I'm a huge John Carpenter fan. We're probably going to talk about him some more, but we should definitely give Dan his credit here in the episode that he really does have an incredible career. Just some of his, writing efforts, of course, Dark Star and Alien. He wrote on the heavy metal animated movie, the series and film of Blue Thunder, Life Force, Total Recall, Screamers, also the story credits on the remakes of Aliens and Total Recall. So definitely just is another person who is very influential in what people think of as like 80s and 90s, sci-fi, drawing from a certain tradition. And on this film, he also plays the role of Pinback. He was the film editor for the film. He was also the special effects supervisor and a production designer for the film. So a lot of these things that you see are down to him, or at least him, yelling at the right people to get it done.
I was like, is the band Pinback named after him? There's a band called Pinback, and
I would have to imagine that that's true.
And it is true. And I didn't know this because I only know a few of their songs, but they're pretty good. I would recommend them. But I guess I read that they even sample clips from Dark Star in their songs, which is pretty cool because most of their songs I hear are chill indie songs, So it's not even an obvious that's the obvious movie to mash up with that type of music,
Yeah. I thought that my only connection musically was, I think Human League, one of their early singles, has samples like the movie during one of their songs. I can't remember the name of the song though, but
the music in this is awesome too.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's John Carpenter, right?
Of course it's John Carpenter. Yeah.
So good. So the two of them, I guess, both work together to create. Say what you want about. I don't know if this is his best movie I've ever seen, but I enjoyed pretty much watching all of it because of the vibe for one, and then it was pretty funny the whole time, even if it all didn't really come together as one thing,
Yeah, it's funny that and I'm sure that you could probably go to any film school graduating class of USC and go, and that led to this and this and this, but this time, the 70s in American cinema, certainly the 70s of sci-fi and films that would become, blockbuster films, which would dominate Hollywood to this day, the people working in and around, the players in this, the cast list in this production are these people that would become huge. Probably the one good thing that John Landis has ever done in his life is he was a friend of Dan O'Bannon's, and kind of liked this, thought that their film was funny, and so he sort of got them this deal with this smaller time producer.
Awesome.
So if he hadn't helped them blow up this movie into a big movie, which wasn't itself successful, but I'm sure gave experience and credit to the people working on it, then we might not have had Alien and all the things that came from that. We might not have had John Carpenter like as a filmmaker in the form that we did. So I guess we have to thank John Landis for that.
I guess so. Yeah.
Also,
gotta hand it to him.
The special effects, which were achieved as cheaply as possible, obviously, also were worked on by future legends. A guy named Ron Cobb, who worked on films like Star Wars, Alien, Raiders, Conan, Back to the Future, Abyss. He, got his start here basically doing ship designs. And then, he would design the ships, and then a guy named Greg Jean would do the model works. Greg Jean would go on to work on both Close Encounters and get nominated for an Academy Award on that, and then also did work for the Star Trek franchise, doing ship models and designs for later Star Trek shows.
That's great. Yeah, some of the designs were really cool. Like I like the inside of the computer area where they keep going to the face. But then there's also the stuff in the movie, like the beach ball or like certain sets they're on that are fun because they're clearly so like cheaply done. But I don't know. They had a way of like making it both like convincing and funny at the same time. Yeah. Like I was like, yeah, this beach ball alien is he's a real dick, but also he's so beach ball.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I suppose any family tree, if you go back far enough, the branches collapse into only a few trunks. But that's kind of like how it feels. Like it just feels like I've been talking about the effects behind a lot of the Star Trek films because we're talking about Star Trek films on Enterprising Individuals this year, and you start to realize like. Again, many people worked, painting the models and maybe didn't get credit, but like there's like 3 or 4 guys that like gave us everything that we think of, both Star Wars, Star Trek, all these films in the late 70s and moving into the 80s came from like a couple different studios of guys who all just like either, went to school together or just like ate lunch every weekend together.
This feels like it kind of bridges the gap from like we've talked about a lot of like 50s sci-fi movies, which we know like John Carpenter is really influenced by. Yeah. But it feels like it felt like both that kind of movie, but even watching this first one, it also feels like a John Carpenter movie. So like, I don't know. I like that it is paying a lot of homage or whatever. And like it's parodying stuff, but it also feels like new or like feels like almost like, I don't know, because when I think of a lot of the feel of like a John Carpenter movie, like I usually like get like 80s vibes and stuff like that, and you can sort of like feel that already in this, early movie way before that time period, I guess.
Yeah, you have to remember too that like Star Wars is 3 years away at this point. So there isn't what we think of as like, oh yeah, dirty 70s, lived in universe look is in the future. And in fact, I think in a lot of ways, you can see influences of movies like Dark Star in Star Wars. Certainly in the execution of a lot of the effects, but they got there first. And this film, which by the way is like not very long, even with the extra scenes, it's like 83 minutes. It just blows right by. There is a documentary on YouTube about it that is called Let There Be Light. And the documentary is 2 hours long. So the documentary is longer than the film. But they get all the old cast together, interview them, and talk about its influences. And it is kind of a fun documentary. But yeah, this film, like, its obvious first inspiration is 2001, right? Like 2001 comes out in 1968, right? And so that would have been, very close to the time that they started writing all this down and starting to think about what they want their student film to be about. Right around the time that they were probably expanding this into a longer film, a film comes out called Silent Running, which I can't remember if we've talked about on the show before, but Silent Running it's another one of those films that was probably influenced a little bit by movies like 2001 or maybe even something like Solaris, but must have been in process to the point that it can't be totally ripping off 2001. Do you know what I mean? Like there are original ideas there, and it was written by, weirdly enough, Michael Cimino, who was a filmmaker in his own right, and Stephen Bochco, the cop show guy who wrote L.A. Law and Cop Rock and all that stuff. And it was directed by Douglas Trumbull, one of the only movies that he directed. He did the effects for 2001. And so he's another and Star Trek The Motion Picture as well. And so that's about Bruce Dern on a spaceship, and he's on a spaceship with a bunch of other guys in jumpsuits. They're all really bored. They talk to the home base every once in a while, and the home base is like, oh, we're all rooting for you. And they are protecting the last of the forests that have been removed from Earth because everything is polluted, and Earth is in end stage capitalism. And so it's a sort of like a 70s, environmental sort of commentary. But this is kind of like that, only no point. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is like, what if we just sort of made fun of space movies in general? What if we made fun of the idea of, Dave Bowman having to try to talk Hal off a ledge, his computer, but in this case, they're talking to their bombs. And so you see the influences, but you also see John Carpenter going like, it doesn't have to be about anything. It's just it's just fun. We're just having fun.
Well, he conveys certain things really well, though. Like they do get like kind of the isolation. That's like a common theme. I think of like The Thing has that too, or whatever. So maybe I don't know. I think it is kind of about things, even if he's like, we're making a mess of this. Like. Even the bomb thing, I thought it was very funny. It was the best part, I think. But I thought it was like interesting enough too that I was like could see this in a normal movie. I guess that's not like this like that. Even though they're not taking it seriously, I like kind of took it seriously. Maybe I was just like under the influence a little bit, but I was like, whoa, that's crazy. maybe the Voyager episode is the example of that, because that episode, it plays it very seriously. Like this is not the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard of. Like we're trying to talk down a bomb. And that's one thing I loved about the Voyager episode, was like how seriously it felt like they took it.
Yeah. The idea of them having a computer that they talk to, and like the computer like talking to them, the room where the computer, that's like the computer's room, even though they're like kind of starved for space, there's this room that's just the computers. All that kind of reminded me of Alien, like having Mother, and
yes,
and the room where you go interface with Mother, and like the dehumanizing aspects of their job, like taking something like space exploration, which should be amazing, and they're traveling, and the hard sci-fi elephants, hard sci-fi elephants. That's my band. The hard sci-fi elements of having them, being gone for 20 years on this thing, but because of time dilation, they've only aged a couple years. But it might as well be 20 years for them.
Right. Yeah.
The fact that when they get into they don't have like a cool bridge, in like a control area. Like they're all just crammed into this thing that clearly you'd have to all slide out one by one if you're going to go.
It's awful. Yeah.
Go back to your room or something. So yeah, just having space exploration be this horrible job. I mean, there's a commentary there for sure. Trying to make your bombs and your machines so smart that you don't have to do anything, and the problems that causes. I mean, that's all commentary.
Yeah. I love that. His delivery too, when he was talking down the bomb, he's like kind of, I don't know, over exaggerated. Like, I guess he's floating in space, but it's like, it really feels like you're really trying to convince this bomb of your argument.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Teaching it phenomenology and like and Cartesian doubt. Like I think, therefore I am, or do I? Yeah. What is real?
Yeah.
It's so weird too that that idea comes from their boss, who is dead and in a freezer, but also is like hooked up to a radio, and so when they really get in trouble, they go talk to him. Yeah.
Yeah, and that also made me think of like it as sort of a commentary. It's like we can't make any decision before we consult the frozen zombie that we have on the board. He's gonna give us the right answer.
Yeah. And having like him be victimized and essentially killed by by this malfunction, this like thing that goes wrong, and it sets it up really well in the beginning when they get their message from Earth, and they're basically like refusing to like, sorry, budget means that we can't fix your thing or whatever. So like it's the neglect that has led to this situation in the first place. And so having like their boss, Doolittle's got to take over, but a well-named character, like he doesn't really care about any of this stuff, and he himself is just sort of a hippie who God knows how he ended up in space, doing this instead of surfing. So yeah, it's just like, I don't know, like the fallibility of the characters is like a 180-degree turn from the super capable men and women of the Federation in the 24th century. But yeah, it makes them like really endearing though as well.
Yeah. Well, they all have. I was thinking about this too when you mentioned Star Wars. Like in Star Wars, everyone looks like they all have like very specific 70s haircuts, which dates it somehow, but also it's timeless in a weird way. But like it's even more specific in this movie because all of the whole crew looks like, California college students in the 60s and 70s or whatever. Yeah. And yeah, that
guy's like, he's the guy's like clipping his mustache. It's like you gotta like, it's very you have to very meticulously maintain this shaggy sort of look.
Yes, yeah. So it really adds a certain specificness to the vibe of the movie for sure. It's a student film when you're watching it. Oh
yeah. Although it's, for being a student film, I think that it is very capably pulled off. There's a couple, you get that thing where there's like a TV level of effects or like verisimilitude where you're like, okay, that's good enough for TV. And so when you see the Captain Picard walk down the corridors of the Enterprise, like there's stuff's kind of shiny, the carpet's clean, but you're like, but this isn't like a movie. Like it would be lit different. There would be, an exponentially higher amount of gewgaws and detail and stuff like that. And this is like, this doesn't necessarily like reach up to feature film, but it is all pretty consistent for the cardboard or whatever it is that they had. And there's a lot of like skill, I think, on the screen in terms of the staging, but also like the effects. The whole sequence, they did the whole sequence with the elevator so John Carpenter could like show off that he understands how to shoot forced perspective, and to make it look like a guy's, sometimes he's hanging from a thing. Sometimes they must have had him actually hanging from a thing, because I don't know how they would fake that otherwise. But, you're shooting on his side, and so it looks like he's hanging down a shaft, but he's just laying on the ground, and then having them switch it around. Like there's a lot of skill. Like I hope he got an A.
Yeah, that part was pretty impressive. Yeah. I definitely agree.
Then he climbs up into the elevator, and then the Looney Tunes stuff comes again. He's pushing all the buttons, and he picks up the phone, and it's like, oh, sorry, this phone is out of order. Please call somebody and tell them.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, when I say it feels like a student film, like I don't even mean because it like feels cheap. It's just like the specific circumstances, like the guys that look in the way they do, or even because some of it is like the budget, but it works in this. You know what it feels like? And I know there's a movie that neither of us were like kind of hot on, but it's a thing I sort of liked about it. Was it reminded me of High Life a little bit, where like part of in that movie it's like it doesn't really matter if this like really looks like a spaceship, you know what I mean? And when they jump into space they just kind of fall, and it's like that actually kind of adds to it a little bit. It was like that's not really what's important, and it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of unique, I guess. So I kind of like it. It feels like not ashamed of being cheap, or not cheap, but not like full realism. That's the aim.
Yeah, and who's to say what realism is on a spaceship in the future? I might have to watch. I might have to watch High Life again, because I remember when I watched High Life, I was unimpressed mostly by a lot of the sets where it was just clear that we're just shooting this in an office building, but it's supposed to be like decks on a ship.
Yeah.
But then
I agree. Yeah.
In that time, I've ended up, it's a long story, but I've ended up watching a lot of ferry videos on YouTube. There's this channel where this guy takes, he's Japanese, and he takes ferries from place to place. There's a lot of ferry travel, and I don't mean like ferries like across the bay. Like there's like 36-hour ferry travel from city to city or island to island. And so those
Whoa.
are ships. And a lot of those ships, you know, if you're not looking out a window, just look like you're in an office building. So I don't know, maybe High Life had made the mistake of having a little too much verisimilitude in that they should have tried to look a little more like an alien ship or a spaceship or something like that.
I remember when I took a ferry, I got that feeling too, because you had the hum of the ship, and or even that's something I noticed watching like one of the recent episodes of Strange New Worlds, is they do have like the real big shiny chrome deck and sickbay and stuff, but like when you're in like Spock's quarters, it actually captures like the TNG era like feeling of like you're just in like a nice hotel room.
Oh, sure.
That's so I don't know. That's something I like. Where it's like it doesn't feel totally futuristic or like you're on a fancy sleek ship. It's like no, this is like supposed to be a comfortable kind of area to hang out.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't know. I think I heard that this was partially based, or at least the kernel of the idea for the story came from a Ray Bradbury short story from the Illustrated Man collection called Kaleidoscope. And the only real connection that I think of is, or that I know is like, it's the way it ends. In the ending, it's an astronaut is sort of like blown out of his rocket when his rocket explodes. And he, I'm not sure what happens in the story, but I think it's like kind of a fatalistic story. And so he hopes that he can do something good in the last moments of his life. And so he burns up in the atmosphere, but like a kid like sees him and thinks he's a shooting star and makes a wish and decides that the kid wants to be an astronaut or something like that. So it's like this really like grim kind of like, okay, kind of idea, which I think they preserve at least the spirit of that, but then of course put a good amount of like 70s stoner whimsy into it too.
It's sort of like, that's why I feel like it does like have a point, maybe because it is kind of like, it does feel like it expresses kind of a same sort of feeling that a lot of John Carpenter movies have, though it depending on which ones, but like this one, it sort of have the sort of feeling of like, yeah, like your job sucks, you know, you don't have the budget to fix the thing that killed this guy, you know, you can't really talk to your boss, it's like, and it's probably going to kill you. You're going to die someday, but it's like, oh, fuck it. I'm going to surf.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
right.
Like, that's how I'm going to cope, you know? And for John Carpenter, it's, well, now he has a lot of money, so I'm sure he likes that, but now that's sort of his attitude is like, I'm not going to work. I want to play Xbox.
Dark Star Podcast. Do it, John Carpenter.
Whoa, yeah.
Get this thing made. Well, I mean, if they'll turn The Man Who Fell to Earth. If we had a Patreon, we never get anybody to do a Patreon, but if we had a Patreon, we would definitely be watching the David Bowie movie, The Man Who Fell to Earth, and then I would put a gun to your head and make you watch the Paramount Plus series, The Man Who Fell to Earth, and we were talking about that. The fact that they would even reach into the like sticky bottom of the 70s sci-fi toy box to get The Man Who Fell to Earth, why not remake Dark Star? You know, why not give it a new twist? You know, we are more open to the criticism of the government, our military, of militarized science, and the corporatizing of space and blowing up planets that aren't going in the direction that you want them to. So time to get rid of them. I think that you could definitely make something out of that. Now, I'm not saying like make 3 seasons on Netflix out of it,
No.
but a miniseries or something, sure.
They could definitely convince John Carpenter to quote unquote produce it.
Hey, you can have it if I can do the music. That'll be his deal.
Yeah, because that was like the Halloween thing too, right? Like his name's kind of on it, but he didn't.
Yeah, and he does the music for it too.
Oh yeah, and he did the music. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's like, if you let my band play at it, like, okay, man, all right, and $5,000 in Xbox bucks. Okay, yeah,
deal.
We'll have my guy call your guy. I think it's interesting. You know, this is of course Aliens, and Dan O'Bannon wasn't involved in that one, other than his ideas, of course, leading to its creation. But they play the knife game in this, like they do in Aliens.
Right.
That was
yeah, it does sort of feel like a little bit like, well, if people didn't really appreciate this stuff in this movie, like I can still do it, you know.
What is that called? Is it like something Wabajack, or what's that game called?
Oh, the knife game?
Yeah. It's got something
know.
Jack.
No, I don't know. I just thought it was the knife game. I don't know.
Oh, Smack Jack. Five finger fillet. That's what they call it in Red Dead Redemption, but I don't.
I'd be really bad at it. I'm just sampling it right now, and I'm like, nope, couldn't do it.
I wonder if that itself is a reference to Knife in the Water, because that's in Roman Polanski's Knife in the Water.
Oh, I had no idea.
Not everything. Look, I know we're on the show backtracking, but I suppose not everything that happens in a movie is a reference to something else. But if you see a baby carriage going down some steps, it is definitely Battleship Potemkin via Jesse Step sequence. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, it's like sometimes you don't even realize it too, you know?
Oh, yeah, for sure. There are, I think TV Tropes has a good page of like literally like 50 different examples, not just in film and TV and cartoons and, anime. There's that, it's still going on, I guess, but the whole cartoon movement started by like Ren and Stimpy about like cartoons are also kind of for adults. And so they're going to reference like Kramer versus Kramer or something like that. There's just no way a kid has any shot at it, but some stoned adult, on watching it on Adult Swim's like, oh yeah, I get it.
Oh yeah, that's the whole. It's like a whole network now.
That's kind of Well, maybe that John Carpenter isn't totally that, but I think that his stuff is that a little bit.
Oh, because he's a little highbrow, but he's not. He's lowbrow.
It's that's a great question, and maybe as we continue to talk about his films on the show, we can try to answer that eventually. I don't think we have to do it now, but I was thinking about that. I don't think that he would want to be described as highbrow, and I definitely think that he is trying to reinvent the films and entertainments of his youth, like this. Forget even 2001 for a second. Like, this is basically just a send up of films like Forbidden Planet, only less money. Forbidden Planet had a great budget, but there were like a ton of crappy 50s sci-fi movies where it's just a bunch of assholes, in a rocket, and they're doing something or other, and they seem to really care about what they're doing, as opposed to the guys in Dark Star who are like, all I want to do is just like smoke in my room. It's so boring.
It's like he put himself into those movies.
Yeah, right. So I don't know if he would describe it as lowbrow, but I think he would definitely be like, well, this isn't, I don't take it as seriously as those movies clearly take themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, but you can tell he does a little bit,
Oh, yeah.
That I think that might be true a little bit. It's funny, like, because when I think about a lot of the leads in a lot of his movies, it feels like he cast the coolest guy he could think of at the time.
Yeah.
And usually it's Kurt Russell, but sometimes like Roddy Piper, and I feel like that could be, you could kind of see it as like he's kind of doing movies he was influenced by, and like, but he put like, I don't know, maybe that's too, just because it's like if you think about those movies from that time, like he's putting in like a John Wayne type character or something like that, someone who is also like his version of like the really cool guy in like those old 50s movies. Right.
And his character is always, he's a cool guy, but he's also kind of like philosophical and kind of above what's going on. Right. And so he isn't just a meathead, but he's not an effeminate intellectual either. Like, he's a guy who has his own sort of like thoughtful code. It's a very Western sort of thing. And it's just really funny that he's never really actually made like a Western. Assault on Precinct 13 is Rio Bravo, as you and I both know. Mm-hmm. And that's close. Big Trouble in Little China was originally supposed to be a Western, but then got turned into Big Trouble in Little China. That's probably the closest that I think he's got to maybe a Western. And then even in that, he can kind of laugh at himself because he casts his boy, Kurt Russell, in it. And the character is a complete like buffoon and kind of send up of that character who's like got a code. He's talking about the Pork Chop Express, and he's completely full of himself and just completely lost the entire movie. So I like the fact that like he likes this possibly now problematic idea of a male American hero, but also I think he's absolutely willing to shoot it up. And he's doing that in this and that, I talked about like, the sci-fi 50s hero, the white heroes, the Leslie Nielsen's, of cinema. In this film, intellectualism is not a boon to anyone. Being good at fixing things is really bad for Talby. He gets shot into space. Making your bomb smart is a bad idea because it's going to talk itself into blowing up. The commander, for all of his smarts, ends up frozen in an Ashes to Ashes video in the basement. It's like being prepared, being capable is no help in this universe.
It's not only that, like, they made the bomb like that too, but like the fact that it's like it's the opposite of Star Trek, because like there's a lot of episodes where they just can solve it by pure intellect and like talk someone down, whereas this it's like it's the opposite. Like you talked them into destroying you, so it's like
everything they did made it worse.
Right. It's like that's why it's almost like then it feels like at the end like a little maybe nihilistic or something, where it's sort of like, like I said, F it, I'm just gonna surf, like, what's the point? Almost.
This movie I think is almost completely forgotten except by cinephiles, but it did certainly inspire many of the people who would make things that would be remembered forever. I have no idea if Gene Roddenberry saw or cared about Dark Star. I seriously doubt it, but I'm positive that George Lucas knew about it and cared about it. You think about a guy trapped in space and he just wants to have fun and he's wearing a jumpsuit. I think this was bigly influential on MST3K as well as Silent Running was in the development of that. And so, it's one of those things that like, I don't know if there's any way to get people to care about it if they don't already. It's probably only going to recede like Talby with the Phoenix asteroids, into the distance as the years go on. But I'm glad it exists because it certainly helped us get a lot of the things that we have now.
I think there's room to convince people. One, obviously, because it's a John Carpenter movie. So anyone who likes John Carpenter will probably eventually get there.
I can't remember if I've ever seen this. You'll see this, of course, as the years go on, the prints get worse and worse. But they do like midnight movies with this once in a while, and it'd probably be a really good midnight movie.
Oh, definitely. And
I don't think
also
I've ever seen one though.
I recommended it to some people right away because I knew they liked like movies about like Prometheus or whatever, where it's like one if you already like Alien, there you go. But then if you really like more of that like AI element, even though it's silly, like I said, I think you can watch it and like take it kind of seriously and it's still cool, even if it's like laughable, so I think there's a room to get people like if they did do that sort of remake, I think there's people who could get into it, but they probably wouldn't do it comedic, would they?
I don't know, we have a weird relationship with comedy these days.
I feel like the only way something like that would go is if it was like full on like Douglas Adams sort of tone, because they have that where actually doesn't in the second book like the robot convinces like a ship to kill itself, right?
There are a couple. I've been thinking about Douglas Adams this entire conversation and didn't say anything, so I'm glad you brought him up. There are a couple situations where characters talk to things. Marvin talks. I think in the third book, Marvin talks a tank into killing itself. I think also in the second or in the third book, you asked, Zappa Beeblebrox talks a door into not opening loudly because he's trying to sneak up on somebody, and all the doors, because this is a good sci-fi ship, have been programmed to make the shh sound when they open. And he's like, I want you to open quietly. Do not make that sound when you open. And there's another scene, I think, again in the same book. So Douglas Adams is really working on a deadline, where Zaphod, I think, talks to an elevator. Elevators in his universe are psychic, so they know to be there when you need them. But that means that, like, when there's danger on a floor, elevators don't want to go there. They're scared because they know that something's bad is there. So he's trying to talk an elevator into going to that floor. So this definitely feels like that. And I wish we could ask Douglas Adams what he thought about Dark Star. I bet he liked it.
He probably would have liked, especially the way the bomb's like sort of attitude when he's like, I don't want to hear that. That seems like something one of his characters would say. But the difference I feel like is like, his books are like constantly cheeky, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas like this is like, it has both tones where it's like slapstick, goofy, silly, but then like it's also like tripped out and like, whoa, this is weird and heavy.
Yeah,
you know?
it's not that like Carpenter couldn't do cheeky or dry, but I mean, as an American, like his sensibility is let's have a beach ball in there. Let's have Boiler just decide to start shooting the gun in the hallways because he's bored. Boiler's like that kid in the back of the class that's like, if this kid gets too bored, he's going to start lighting something on fire or something.
Yeah, spit wads and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, just if they remade it, I feel like it would be hard to capture this tone. But I guess people didn't like it at the time, so maybe it's not a tone they're trying to capture.
And I wasn't able to get an idea of the width of its release. Like it had a distributor, but I'm fairly sure it didn't show throughout the country. So I'm not sure. Maybe more information can be found in that documentary, but... we barely talked about the smart bomb, but maybe we can add some of that conversation into the discussion about our Voyager episode, which we should get to right now. So let's take a break for a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more backtracking.
Hi, I'm Mikan Hana.
And I'm Caliban.
And we're the hosts of the Sailor Noob podcast. I'm the expert.
And I'm the noob.
You're talking into the wrong end of the microphone.
Aye, aye.
Okay, every week we watch a new episode of Sailor Moon and learn about monsters, fashion, food, culture, and of course, the sailor warrior of love and justice, Sailor Moon.
All right, now, what is her rank? Is she an admiral or a rear admiral?
Okay, shh. The ad's almost over. We're a couple of magical people, and every week we Moon Prism Power make up a new episode.
Steady as she goes.
Please stop that. Sailor Noob is available every Friday on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Shiver me timbers. Okay, we're back. It's time to talk about the Trek side of this equation. It's well known that the television series Star Trek Voyager never exactly lived up to its daring premise, namely a starship full of tension, ex-terrorists, and broken people. It did, though, throughout its 7-year run, make good at showing a different kind of crew than your normal Star Trek crew, one who wasn't necessarily at the top of their class in the Academy, one who didn't have the resources and manpower of the Federation's flagship, but a crew of wounded people looking for fulfillment and redemption while looking for their home, representing an islet of empathy while separated from the mainland of the Federation. And in true Star Trek style, the crew of the Voyager would do their best to redeem other beings as well, be they organic or artificial, as we see in the 5th season episode, Warhead.
Back off, this thing could be dangerous. On Wednesday on an all-new Voyager, an alien bomb with a mind of its own.
You're an artificial intelligence, embedded in a machine of some kind.
We'll take possession of the Doctor.
I am programmed to destroy my target. I will complete my mission.
And unless someone can disarm it, it's going to be one explosive showdown.
The device is going to detonate. Everyone on board will be killed.
Voyager.
And it didn't occur to me until we had already watched the episode and we were knee-deep into planning this thing, but this also happens in a couple other episodes, doesn't it?
Yeah, actually, I thought
that this was Dreadnought. I got Dreadnought, and I'm glad that we watched Warhead because I think it fits better. But this is basically also Dreadnought. Like, B'Elanna Torres programs a Cardassian missile to blow up, and then they encounter it later on in the Delta Quadrant, and she has to talk it out of like wanting to kill.
That's exactly what I thought it was going to be. And then
when
I put it in, I actually had watched Warhead more recently because I'm on like the 7th season of Voyager. And I was like, oh, okay, well, it's actually better that it's this one.
Okay, yeah. And then there's another episode, I think called Prototype, which is also in the same season. So in the 2nd season, there's Dreadnought, and then a couple episodes before, there's an episode called Prototype, where B'Elanna Torres like finds a mannequin robot man and like has to repair him, but he's like programmed to continue this war between their races of two different robots. And so she's trying to talk this, AI out of like this quest to kill all these other robots. And it's like, boy, Voyager could really repeat a premise when they wanted to.
Voyager is just in general no stranger to going back to the well. So yeah, not surprising.
Our sub podcast where we just compare Voyager episodes with other Voyager episodes.
Yeah, it would be. We could do Enterprise too.
Oh yeah.
When it's like insanely saturated.
Yeah. This was written by Michael Taylor and Kenneth Biller, two stalwarts of this entire era of Trek, but certainly Voyager. And the story came from Brannon Braga. And the thing about Brannon Braga is this: if I ever met Brannon Braga, I would flip a coin, and if it was heads, I'd kick him in the balls, and if it was tails, I would buy him a drink, because we owe him so much. And I'm sure that he's probably a totally fine guy if you just meet and talk to him. But he's also somebody who, I think, in the great tradition of, let's say, creative people, John Carpenter, he's old now, sure. But, Ridley Scott's making movies still. Like, John Carpenter could make movies still. But I think he has reached a point where he's like, I've said a lot. One of the things I don't like is having to wrestle with idiots that don't know anything about storytelling and filmmaking to get things into my movies. So I'm just going to play Xbox and make music. I don't want to make the movies anymore.
Right.
And
yes,
that happens to a lot of creative people. Brannon Braga, a long time ago, said to himself, I'm a creative person, but I want to do this for a living. And so I will make whatever compromise I need to. I will, I will do the same premise in 3 years, because who's going to pay attention? Like, I think there is an element to what he does. And about this episode, he said that this is based on the end of the Cold War and the idea that, when the Soviet Union fell, there were a lot of missiles and nuclear missiles, ordnance, bombs, things that were out there that sort of could have made their way into the wrong hands. And so this is that. And I don't disagree that that is possibly true, but this is also Dark Star. Like, this is just Dark Star, right? Like, they're trying to tell a bomb to not fulfill its mission, and all it wants to do is fulfill its mission. Like, that's exactly what it is. Now, I don't know if he wouldn't say that because he doesn't want to seem like he's unoriginal, but dude, you've written like hundreds of TV episodes and we've done half of them. So like, I know where you got this from.
Okay. So you're very confident. I wasn't sure. It makes sense now thinking about how it's kind of a forgotten movie. So like, maybe sort of felt like no one will notice if that's really what he did.
I guess. I don't know how old he is. I'm sure he's probably a little bit older than me, but if he, saw this, on UHF TV late at night, like I did, and then he became a TV writer, it's gotta be in his Rolodex somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, that's fine too. Like it's with a lot of episodes where I think they did a good job of like adapting it and making it fit into the Star Trek sort of universe and sort of like give it their, it's not nihilistic sort of ending,
Yeah, well, it would never be, but like having an artificial AI character is a gimme for them, right? They're like, oh, okay, obviously then we put the Doctor at the center of this. One of the reasons that I think that this probably started with a riff on Dark Star is that it doesn't develop at all. The bomb is only the bomb has 2-3 minutes of screen time maybe in Dark Star, but it leaves an impression. The character of the bomb, or the torpedo that never gets a name in this, is acted by Robert Picardo, and it's one of those chances. He's, Voyager's Brent Spiner. We always want to give Robert Picardo more to do. But he never has any levels and he never goes anywhere. He's just yelling at everybody the entire time. And then at the very end, he says, oh, okay, I guess we did get the radio message, and it turns out we're not supposed to do this, and so I'm going to sacrifice myself. And there is no development. Like, even the torpedo in Dreadnought has more development. I don't know about the mannequin robot in Prototype, and so like, if you were going to take an idea, you'd want to fit it into your universe and give it more body. And I think for this, I don't know where it's late in the season, maybe they're saving money, but they're like, yeah, we'll have, Bob just do some stuff and then that's it. And I wish that the bomb had more of a character, because even the short little arc of the bomb, going from a fussy bomb that wants to do his job to discovering philosophy and then megalomania and then killing everybody, that's a pretty good arc for the short amount of time that he spends on screen.
Yeah, because I felt like it had all the pieces to it. Maybe they could have been fleshed out more, because it did have like the moments where he's unsure. He has sort of like a crisis of faith where he's like, should I go through with this? But it's all pretty brief. But I think I don't know, it was fine for me when I watched it casually. I was sort of like, just thought the concept was so wild. like, because I watched it actually before, like I said, in my rewatch before we got to this, so I wasn't even thinking about the comparison, and I hadn't recalled like a specific, like, it was so specific to me that it was like the bomb was having a personal crisis, you know, that was what stood out to me. So like, and even though it was very brief, like, it was really memorable to me. Like, the idea of a bomb being like, maybe it's a little galaxy brained or whatever, but I was just thinking like, whoa, like, it's a bomb, but it's like, what if I'm not a bomb? And I just thought that was so, I was laughing for sure. It's a little silly, but that's what I love about Star Trek. Like I said, is that they can take these very goofy things and treat them very seriously and like convince me that it's something to like emotionally care about. It worked for me.
That is true. I wish that they had allowed that to reach into the characters of the show more, like the lives of our characters, because there's a lot going on in this episode. You know, there is they bookend it with Harry, right? With Harry being on the night shift and being in control, and the entire time there's kind of a concern, kind of a runner about his confidence in his command abilities, or at least the responsibility of, he's glib about making decisions, and then he realizes, oh, I could make a decision where we let a missile on board that takes everybody hostage and wants to start a war. But in true Voyager fashion, or maybe just in Star Trek fashion, like, it doesn't really lead anywhere. Everything's fine by the end. Mm-hmm. Taking the Doctor, and it makes sense to have Robert Picardo play the missile, but like taking the Doctor and completely eliminating like his viewpoint from the episode because he's taken over for the entire thing means that you've kind of cut, you know, another character out of it. Torres is there, and she's literally done this before, but like we don't really reference that. And so like, how does she's there to encourage Harry, but how does she really feel about it? Like, if she was a voice saying, you know, she was the naysayer saying, no, we need to, like, I've got this way to beam it off the ship. We can blow it up. We can kill it. And Harry's trying to save it, or the Doctor's trying to save it because it's a real, you know, life. The fact that it just sort of blows itself up at the end is, I don't know. It's a little too clean for me.
I think what could have made it work a little bit better is because you're talking about how he's like mostly just screaming at him the whole time. Because a lot of Star Trek episodes will just be like, they'll like kind of drop the dilemma on you right away, and then the whole episode is kind of like the character that is having to make the choices, like just like talking to different people, and like they raise the stakes a little bit, but overall like you sort of just get like, oh, they kind of changed their way of thinking because they've got everyone's different perspective. And I think maybe if they had a scene like that where, you know, first the bomb is hostile and takes him over, but then like maybe there's some uncertainty about the stand down order, and maybe you had some moments where he's like talking, you know, just actually talking to them, not screaming, you know. And then like the other bombs show up, so he's like, I don't know, I guess I should go with them, but then he doesn't, you know, that maybe that could have made it better, like just more. Yeah. Give the bomb some not shouty times.
Yeah. Have you seen the movie Crimson Tide?
I have not, no.
Oh, okay. You should. We were talking about Ridley Scott before. It's a Tony Scott film, but it's really good. And it involves a situation similar to this. You know, it's about a U.S. nuclear submarine, and the submarine itself is kind of the warhead. You know, there's the threat of a conflict, of a war, and they receive an order to get ready to shoot, you know, their nuclear missiles, which will essentially begin World War III no matter what happens. And then they lose their ability to communicate. And so they can't confirm the order. And the captain is ready to follow his orders and do what he has to do. It's what he's trained for. And the XO, played by Denzel Washington, is like, no, I'm the voice of reason. Like, we could make the conflict worse if we do this. And so it becomes a conflict between them. And it's just a real, you know, sweaty submarine, you know, it's, filled with testosterone type film.
Sounds great.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of this. And I don't know if it's because that came out in 95 and they didn't want to be seen to do a Crimson Tide, or if they felt like Crimson Tide, yes, is military fiction, but that's not what we do. We're Star Trek. What you're describing, the whole, oh my God, so now I've got reasonable doubt that this isn't the right order, but maybe that's a faked order, you know, maybe I'm questioning it. All of that takes about 3-4 minutes of screen time before Seven is hurt. And then in true Trek fashion, Harry uses, empathy. He emphasizes to the bomb that it's like, this is the kind of hurt that I'm talking about here. Like these people aren't statistics. They're not just numbers. Like you will be hurting people like this, and kind of gets through to him that way. But that turn is like that fourth act is like so quick.
Yeah.
I wish that it could have been longer, because that's what you think of when you think about like Star Trek usually. And Voyager episodes, I think, can get into a and then storytelling kind of situation where it's like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens.
I think what unlocked Voyager for me, I think I've said this before, but like my favorite episodes on this rewatch I've been on are like ones that are more similar to like Time Cop, that are like quote unquote like kind of dumb action movies and less of like the thinky ones. But they also will still have a little bit of the thinky in there, and that's kind of how this was, because it is, like I said, it's so silly. Like it's like what if a nuclear warhead was like a guy, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that was enough for me, and the fact that it just had a little bit of like morality and like empathy, I was like, it's like watching like a good Van Damme movie, where it's like, it's not the main focus, but there's some of that in there, and all the actors are really good, so it convinced me. When he made his heroic sacrifice in the end, I was like, yeah, bomb guy. I don't know his name. I was rooting for him.
Yeah, but he kills like 32 other bombs that, were all potentially aware AIs as well. But whatever. This is my thing about like Voyager. Often it sets up the same kind of moral dilemmas that you'd expect from Star Trek, but either because they have a different view, or they don't know what they're doing, or often when Trek covers a moral ground, covers moral territory, like it covers it well. And so if you go back to it, there's nothing to do but to try and make a different choice, and it doesn't always fly. And I think that if, I mentioned their premise before, I like Janeway as a character, but I think if we saw Janeway, break more rules and do things more desperately because of their circumstances, then you could exploit the differences in their behavior with the values that they're supposed to hold. And right now, people are very, very aware of their love of Star Trek as a utopia, as these people are perfect, they can't make any bad decisions, or my life doesn't mean anything, is what I think that how it feels sometimes. And I think that's too bad, because that's like the new Galaxy Brain 3000 version of we can't have any conflict between these characters, Gene Roddenberry style, is that we can't let our Star Trek characters do anything bad ever, because that's how you get interesting stories, and that's how you redeem characters, and that's how characters show who they are. And I like the fact that everybody did the right thing in this episode for the most part, but I could see other scenarios where things got a little messy, or at least like that scenario I said before where Torres is like, look, I don't care. This thing's trying to kill us, so let's kill it. And maybe you've got Harry like standing in trying to save it because, he feels responsible for what they've done to this thing. When you think about it, this bomb has a completely different opposite arc than the Dark Star bomb. Dark Star bomb just wants to do its job. And then these humans like explain existence to it. And it's like, interesting. And it gets really dangerous. And in this, like this bomb, also just wants to do its job, but then they like talk it into like self-sacrifice and like and teach it empathy, and it's like, oh no, everything's connected, and I have to try to prevent the most amount of casualties as I can.
I mean, I don't know, I think the show does kind of go back and forth of like, sometimes they'll be like, we can't violate our morals, and then other times it's like they'll do it right away. It's like, and they'll be like,
as long as nobody's looking,
and they'll say like, oh yeah, we gotta like do what we can to survive out here. But then other episodes they're like, we can't do that to survive out here. That's against our morals. I can accept that. I think they should, they just should have had given the more of an opportunity to present that as like them in conflict with their own values. You know what I mean? Like that's where I do sort of agree with the people who are like, oh, Starfleet officers can't act this way. Not fully, but I think the idea that there should at least be some baseline acknowledgement of it. You know what I mean? As opposed to like, I don't know, some of the newer Trek stuff is like people are just like mean and awful, and there's like rarely a check for it. You know, it's just like, oh, that's just how people act. You know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I do think that we get the situation where there's in the middle of the episode that the shady like arms dealer character comes in, and he's like, oh, I'll take this off your hands, no problem. But then Janeway's like, but what are you going to do with it? And he's like, oh, there's a lot of things you can do with it. And also you can blow things up. And she's like, okay, actually, you know what? We're good. We don't need your help. And then, of course, that's solved for them because he immediately tries to attack them and then gets blown up for his trouble, which is all well and good. But even at that point, Janeway's like, okay, that sucked. And then the next time the bomb threatens them, she's like, you know what? I'm calling your bluff. Go ahead and blow us up because maybe, we'll all die, but you won't be able to wreak any more destruction, in the universe. And that's kind of like, that's a real Starfleet thing.
That's a very Starfleet thing. I feel like, and maybe this is the case in like Deep Space Nine, like maybe they're like kind of having their cake and eat it too, but I feel like they will emphasize more, like they'll have characters make bad choices, and then like at the end of the episode, I think of the ending of like the Blood Oath or In the Pale Moonlight, where they kind of end and they're like, man, that was really messed up, we did that. Whereas like Voyager, they sometimes do it, but sometimes they do it and they don't really reference it, as it's just sort of like they take it, it's like a matter of fact, like, yeah, that's just like a thing they did because they're stranded out here, so you gotta do what you gotta do. I don't know, I just feel like they have kind of a two-faced sort of a morality, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, like why not have Harry like actually screw something up? Like I think it's fine for him to make a choice, even a choice that like by the book, because he does quote the book to Taurus at one point, like making a choice that is by the book, but lacks any of the perspective, the seasoning of a commander, and makes everything worse. And then, they fix it because they're Star Trek people. It's fine. But at the end, Chakotay's kind of like, now see, Harry, this is like what we're talking about. There's a difference between knowing, what the book says and reading a situation when you're in it. And instead, Harry's just like back in the chair at the end. And he's like, yeah, everything's great. I'm Harry Kim.
Yeah, it reminds me, like, I was explaining. So I have one friend where sometimes, like, we'll be talking and I'll be, like, explaining an episode to him. And he's, like, a little skeptical about, like, most non-original Star Trek stuff. Not that he's really watched much of it, but I was explaining this, and I was like, so, yeah, they just find this thing down on the planet, and then they bring it aboard. And he's like, God, he's like, these Starfleet people would, of course, fall for that. You know what I mean? and like, he just gets this perspective of me, like, maybe it's because I started by, they brought a bomb on the ship, but, like, yeah, that feels like a Star Trek kind of thing, where it's like, they could have maybe, had been like, maybe there's another way to do this or something,
Yeah, but it's talking to them, like the doctor's having a conversation with it and everything.
Yeah, that's true.
Everything's cool, don't worry.
That could have added some drama to the beginning of like, well, we want to figure out what this is before we bring it up. And then the doctor's like, why would you just bring it up? He's a real person. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I'm overthinking it a little bit.
Which is an interesting perspective. Like, we don't, Star Trek doesn't really go too deep into how they feel about AI. We know we have the doctor, we have a character like Data, and we love those characters and we're cool with that. But this is an episode that sort of brings up the idea of, do they believe that this thing is alive? The doctor clearly does. And you think that next it would go to Janeway. Like, does she get to make a decision about if they respect this thing's rights or not? Is there something on the books with Starfleet for artificial intelligence? Do they have to treat this? Because they immediately just begin treating it like it's alive, which I commend them for. But yeah, I wonder just about precedence in this case. Speaking of precedence, I have a question. So Tom Paris wants to replicate some food for his wife and get her a little rose and some candy or something for their anniversary. And I was thinking about the rose that he makes and what we do with flowers, right? You have a flower, you enjoy its beauty while it lasts. Then it dries up and you throw it away or something. Or maybe you don't. Maybe like when I get flowers, they just sit out for weeks until they dry up. There must be very specific rules, not only about what you can make in the replicator, but what you have to put back into the replicator. Like they have rations for what comes out, but they should have rations for like how much they're putting back in when they're done.
They probably do. They probably do.
And have that number be slightly less small than what you take out, right? Especially on a ship that is running on, lower resources like the Voyager. Because let's say that every day Tom Paris makes a rose for his wife. Well, usually you throw those roses away. Sometimes you're a little busy because you're a department head. And like petals of the rose maybe fall behind the dresser. At what point do you pull the dresser back and there's just like 1,000 dried rose petals back there because you can just make as many roses as you want? You know what I mean? Like, what's the conservation of energy? What's the conservation of mass in their rationing? Like how does that work? The fact that you could make anything you want. Do they value the things that they have?
Right. Well, I would imagine that they probably have a stipend for like what they're able to keep, like to take out. And so maybe it's like, it is like
you've created like X amount of calories of energy of objects, but you haven't paid in this much. So where is this stuff? Like, obviously we subtract all the poop that you make from the food, but like you made all those buckets of pork rinds. You didn't bring is your quarters just full of Tupperware containers? Like, we need those back. Those are energy too.
What do they do with the poop, by the way? Do they turn that back into energy?
Well, in the 32nd century, they turned them into apples. We know that. But, I don't know.
That's got to be... I bet you flush the toilet, and it
just goes right into a replicator.
Your poop. We need like someone to do a J.K. Rowling style tweet to explain this.
Yeah.
Or they just drop some random lore on you. Like, please, we did not need to know.
You don't want
case, we
that
need to
job.
Know.
Yeah. Oh, man, I'm on reverse replicator duty. They're the worst. I think that's about it. I got a little scared when they talked about the bombs crossing a threshold, but then I realized we're not in the second season, so it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a fun episode. I like seeing Robert Picardo do something goofy. It always works for me.
Yeah. I do like a Doctor episode generally, although I think that some of his episodes are thought of as some of the worst episodes. Not all of them. Some of them are the best ones.
So strange because
it's kind of feast or famine with Doctor episodes.
Well, from my perspective, he's far and away the best character on the show.
Yeah.
So it's funny that his episodes are considered that, because I think any episode I've seen where you get the more of a chance to hang out with the Doctor is like so much better.
For every blink of an eye or Tinker Tailor Tenor Spy, there's a Darkling or a what's the Beowulf one? Some people like the Beowulf one. I don't like the Beowulf one.
I like the Beowulf one. He gets it on. He gets nasty.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. That's the problem. It's like he's got to do all the data beats all over again. So they're like, let's go through the data beats really fast, and then he can do things like we're going to do a Pygmalion with 7 of 9. That's fun.
Yeah, that's true. That's the only downfall. That's the weak point of Deep Space Nine, is it doesn't really have a data.
I guess not. Well, it's got Odo, but it's not really the same thing though.
They come up with a bunch of clever ways, like they have the Mirror Universe and the holodeck programs and stuff, but like you definitely get more buck wild with Data and the Doctor than like you do Odo, like, okay, he's Curzon now, not that big a deal.
Yeah. Or he meets another changeling, and they're kind of like, are we going out? Like, is this like a gay metaphor, or are we still not allowed to do that? No, I don't think we're allowed to do that.
Yeah,
still,
no.
Well, bombs are dangerous technology and something that makes Trek. Trek is the technology of the future. It can facilitate what the characters are doing just as often. It can blow them all up. So on every show, we randomly pick from a list of Star Trek technologies. We add what we get to the non-Trek media, and we subtract it from the Trek episode to see how each will be different. We call this our technological exchange. And here is the list of technologies that we choose from. We've got phasers, holodecks, tricorders, transporters, warp drives, replicators, communicators, shields, advanced medical technology, and androids. And if I roll on my random number selecting technology, the number I get is number 9. Number 9, we have advanced medical technology, which, funnily enough, I was wondering if this would come up, because I think there are 2 fairly good applications for this. But we'll start, of course, with Dark Star. If the world of Dark Star, which is the future, it's the 23rd century, I believe, if they had Star Trek, Starfleet advanced medical technology, how would it be different?
Well, they almost do. They've got the... Like, they got this dead guy who they can talk to. They don't have that in Star Trek, actually, where you don't talk to any dead people.
Not generally. That's a little too creepy for Star Trek. But maybe that guy would never have been in that situation, because you just put a dermal regenerator on him or something, and he's back up and running. So he's the captain. Yeah,
I forgot exactly what happened to him. Like a spring in his seat shot up and flung him into space or something. What happened?
I think there was a fuse that blew out or something and just burned him or killed him, because they haven't fixed it, because Pinback leans in at one point during the log and is like, oh yeah, Pinback is upset that he has to sit in the seat next to the guy that died still.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to sit there.
What we did not cover Pinback enough. Pinback, played by Dan O'Bannon, who of course would go on to write Alien and many other things. And at one point, they do maybe it's like a High Life thing. They do a series of logs where he's recording his diaries, and we find out that he's not even Pinback. He's some other guy.
Yeah, did he accidentally stow away or something? He got the guy's uniform.
That's a very Douglas Adams thing, or maybe a Harry Harrison thing. The whole dehumanizing nature of this work, that he's literally not even that guy, and it doesn't matter. Everybody's just whatever, just do the thing.
That's apparently I'm not even supposed to be here today.
yeah, right. The name that he gives was actually one of their screenwriting teachers at USC, who went on to write books about screenwriting.
Oh,
so
nice.
It's a little Easter egg there. Yeah,
I like that his whole log thing. I was sort of thinking it was gonna he was gonna I don't know, double cross them or something.
Yeah. So you mentioned this before, and it is one of the reasons that I like it. The fact that it's kind of like vignettes, and that's part of that is it being made by a filmmaker who isn't necessarily going to go on to be known for his screenwriting, but he is trying to paint little pictures of these men, even if the story doesn't flow together perfectly. So I think in a massaged script that would matter more, and it would connect back to something. But instead, it just sort of paints a picture of this kind of sad man who's wearing somebody else's underwear, because this is all that he can do, in this world where they're trapped in space and they're just doing this awful job. But it's okay that it doesn't kind of loop back and really connect to anything.
Yeah, I mean, you can at least say for this short movie, most of the characters are pretty distinct and stand out, and you do get a good sense of all the characters in it, and so it's pretty effective in that sense.
And they all get their little abbreviated arcs, except maybe Boiler doesn't really do much, but Doolittle gets to surf again, and Talby gets rewarded to travel with the Phoenix asteroids.
Yeah.
So, if they had advanced medical technology, they would definitely probably understand better the beach ball alien. It's another sort of cynical look at space, in that they find this alien creature. We get the idea that they haven't seen a lot of aliens, and it just turns out to be this annoying beach ball that won't take orders, and they've got it locked in a room. They would definitely know it better. They wouldn't be trying to feed it stuff that it doesn't want.
Right. Yeah. They could scan it and be like, oh, I detect it. I don't know. They could figure out how to talk to it, maybe.
Yeah. Give it, it doesn't like the mouse toy. Give it the other toy.
Scan its toy preferences. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, the captain would be alive and hopefully, capable and doing his job. I wonder, you don't get I was trying to figure out what the role of everybody is, because this is post Star Trek, so they probably think about it in terms of a commander, an XO, a navigator. You've got a navigator, you've got a bombardier. Say Boiler's probably Pinbacker's the bombardier. So, like, what would Doolittle's role be then if he didn't have to command because the commander is gone? Like, would he have made more progress on his musical instrument?
Which was awesome, by the way. That was great. Yeah.
It's so melancholy and weird. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely set a tone for sure. I think if they had, like, when I was thinking about advanced medical technology, I was sort of thinking of, like, almost any area of this ship. If you took some technology from Star Trek, it would add a great quality of life to the ship, and it's sort of, and it does make me think of, like, the two types of futures they're presenting here, and it makes me think back to when we were talking about, like, Picard or whatever, and I was saying about, like, SpaceX and stuff like that, how I thought maybe they were going for a metaphor of that, which I think would be interesting, and I think that these both show, like, the ideas of these two different futures that we could possibly experience, but, like, it's not just, like, the technology that's going to save us. It's like how we choose to apply it. You know, will we? Because I'm sure in that universe they could have medical technology. You know, it's not just like unfortunate circumstances that they've gotten to. Well, we got to cram all these guys onto a ship and have them go blow up planets. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
You get a sense of, like, oh, these guys are, like, working just like me, you know, and, like, the people back home probably barely give a crap about them too, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. That stands out to me. Anything you could bring in from Star Trek, any sort of that communist utopia, even just a drop would be helpful in Dark Star.
I know that I've watched at least a video, if not a full-length documentary about Carpenter, and I see him as, I guess what I'm saying is, like, I don't really have a sense of him as a person, but if you told me that he was like a beach bum type guy, I know that he comes from New York, but he went to school and lived in California, and if his whole thing was just sort of like, yeah, I just, I got an idea, I'll do it, but otherwise I just kind of want to take it easy. I guess I'd believe that about him. And it seems like it extends to his social commentary as well, because he is definitely getting close to ideas that would be more fleshed out in other works, like Silent Running, or even when Star Trek gets a little cynical. But he's not asking you to buy too much. And even something like Assault on Precinct 13, which starts with, like, the murder of a child, he wasn't trying to make a point about, satanic cults, the satanic panic in the 70s and 80s or anything like that. He's just like, I needed something to start the movie, and I needed, like, bad guys that the good guys could shoot and you wouldn't feel bad for them.
Right.
And I didn't want to use zombies because it's like a real world. So it's just like vicious, satanic murderers, but I wasn't trying to make a point. So I think more often than not, he's not trying to make a point about anything. And so I wonder if this is the beginning of the end of him making a point, or if he's trying to make a soft point, or it's all just coincidence. And he's like, yeah, these characters don't like to work because their job sucks. But, that's kind of the way jobs are sometimes.
Well, I think it goes different ways with him, because then there's, like They Live is like, it's very...
Oh, yeah.
It's like, what do you call it? It's not subtle,
Yeah.
So,
sure.
I don't know. I think it depends on what he's trying to do, but I think he cares in some way or another about certain movies, even if he acts like he doesn't.
And They Live was his, completely. Like, he wrote it under a pseudonym, but that was his script. So that's the point where he definitely did want to say something.
Yeah, it probably varies, but something.
I gotta watch that again.
Most of his movies, something comes through. Like, they always feel like they hit somewhere for me, even if I feel like he's like, I'm trying to be just a little bit more nihilistic or something.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about what would happen if we took the advanced medical technology of Star Trek away in the episode Warhead. Now, right off the bat, this is what I was excited about, even though it's really dumb. They wouldn't be able to do a fake out where Neelix can apparently use a tool of healing to give somebody a wound. There shouldn't be that setting, right? And then they can trick the bomb which as far as I can remember in the episode, never really like looks at Seven or checks her out. Like she just could have been like, "Oh, I'm hurt." But Neelix gets really into the Hollywood stage makeup part of his skill set and gives her this fake wound using advanced medical technology.
That's a great one. I have a very dumb, obvious one. The doctor falls under the umbrella of advanced medical technology.
There's no doctor. Yeah.
So then they just got
there's certainly no sick bay. Yeah. And there wouldn't be a doctor. So the Voyager finds this device on this planet, and presuming that the geniuses who work on Voyager could, translate its digital sort of tongue, they know everything that we end up knowing, but they don't have a doctor to advocate for it.
So they're just like pushing it around on a cart, talking to it or something.
Yeah. Or maybe not even talking to it, just thinking like, oh, it's communicating with us, kind of like our ship's computer, because it's really the doctor that immediately sees it as like a kindred spirit and an AI.
Oh yeah, so they probably wouldn't even become buddies with it.
Yeah. So by the time that it it gains control, like it's just like it's not even regarding that. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it becomes more like a rogue AI type story where they're just fighting against something that has no personality. Like Skynet without the Terminator. Or one of those. This was big in like the 80s when smart buildings were a thing. Where like, oh, the computer in the building has turned against us, and so now you get in the elevator and it like crashes the elevator. Like I guess they do this in the Resident Evil film, like when the Red Queen, turns the whole facility against people.
Episode.
Yeah, there was an X-Files like that
in
too.
The machine or something like that.
Yeah. Good call.
And then it's like that'd be funny if I had a little thing where it could eventually they could teach it how to write letters to communicate with them. And it says, stuff like
fuck
die,
you,
fuck you. Yeah. Eat shit.
This is a way. Okay, so this isn't a Trek story, but I think this is a way better episode because they put this thing, it could be sick bay or whatever, but like they put it in a room, and then it locks off the room and they can't get in, and so the entire time they think that maybe they're making inroads to it, but it's not really talking. We don't get a sense of it. It's monolithic, and then finally. I mean, this is just a scarier 2001, I guess I'm picturing. But like, finally, they have to just make the choice, like, living or dead, we've got to kill this thing because it wants to kill us. That's Alien, I guess. I just made Alien.
Yeah. Well, it's not hard to get there from what we're talking about, even on the Star Trek side of things.
It's an interesting exercise that we do every show because I feel like 75% of the time we just make something that's already made, and I don't know what that says about creativity.
Well, it goes all the way back to what we say about Voyager and particularly Enterprise about like going back to the well, and it's like maybe they didn't even mean to do that because like when we talk about some of these things at first it sounds like we're talking about something else where it's like wow, no one has ever done this before, and then by the time we're done with it we're like, oh, that's like kind of like this.
Yeah, but I mean it all works because Dan O'Bannon did this himself. Like he wrote a movie or helped write a movie about people fighting a beach ball, and then later he's like, no, just the beach ball. Only it's not a beach ball. It's got fangs and it's terrifying, and it's designed by the penis guy, the guy that makes chrome penis art. And we can just, the bomb stuff is fun, but we'll just lose all that stuff, and it's just this now.
Do you imagine if they gave the pitch to H.R. Geiger, and he's like, all right, and he comes back and he's like, I brought you a beach ball.
I brought you a beach ball.
It's got like dicks all over it though.
It looks yes, right. They're just printed dicks.
This is a prototype.
Yeah. All right. Well, once you invent Alien, I think you're done. We have to move on.
Bam.
But should we tell people what's coming up on the next episode of Backtrekking?
Okay. So we are talking about the TNG classic Yesterday's Enterprise.
Yeah.
And we're comparing it with the Final Countdown, which I don't think I have ever seen.
Boy, who knew that it was going to be defunct Sci-Fi June when we were talking about
we got a
what
theme.
we were going to do. But yeah, cult film June is our theme, and the Final Countdown certainly fits into that. Although weirdly, the Final Countdown's a funny film, and we'll talk about this next week. But you never really know, how movies are going to do. I think that's just the way that the world works. But you never know like what's going to last. And sometimes you can get a film that's got like a bunch of fairly famous stars in it and is like about the American military and sci-fi, and you think like this is going to be huge, and then it's like completely disappears. So like, who would have thought that a Kirk Douglas, Martin Sheen movie, you know, set on the USS Nimitz or whatever is going to just completely disappear off the face of the earth by the time 2022 rolls around. But that's what you got.
Yeah, I kind of have that experience all the time now because I get more and more into like looking into people's filmographies and stuff, and there's just so many movies I discover that's like, oh, this has this person and was directed by this person, and I've literally never even heard of it. Like, maybe that's just me. Maybe I just don't know movies that much, but I'm like, how there's so many movies that exist, and then you just like everyone just forgets and try it. I'm like, I gotta know what all these movies are.
It's you know, in 6 years they would do Top Gun, you know, which would be a very big success, and is also about ships and a carrier and stuff like that. But nobody wanted this in 1980, I guess.
Too ahead of its time.
This is also kind of like copyright free June and also kind of Roku June, because both of these films, I don't think anybody holds or really cares about the copyright anymore, because you can watch them essentially anywhere for just about free.
Yeah.
Dark Star is on YouTube, although it's also every 2-bit Annie, you know, streaming service in the world also has it, presumably because the copyright was never renewed.
Well, good. That's what they should do.
So yeah. So next time on the show, the final countdown, and get your Europe jokes ready for that show. That's it for this week's Backtrekking, and thanks for listening. If you like the show, tell a friend and follow us at Backtrekking on Twitter, and tell us what you think that we should look at in future episodes. Gooey, tell the people where they can find you online.
You can go check me out on Twitter. I'm at Gooey Fame.
And I'm at KA1IBAN on Twitter. You can find all of the shows on the Just Enough Trope Network at Just Enough Trope on Twitter. And we will be back next week for July 4th and a very patriotic film, The Final Countdown. Until then, we're signing off, and we'll see you soon. Keep on trekking.